Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 45 of the Survival Project. Today, I'm in conversation with Lorraine, the co-founder of Comfizz. In this conversation, we talk about a young man who never took off his hoodie and wrapped his ostomy to his body in cling film because he was so afraid of it being visible. We talk about how a father's struggle with an ostomy inspired an entire company and why something as simple as the correct fabric can completely change the trajectory of someone's life. Now, that may seem a little bit outrageous, but before we start, I want to tell you my own experience with Comfizz. I've been wearing Comfizz products every single day since 2012. That is literally 14 years this November. When I first got my ostomy, I really struggled. I've spoken about this a lot. My skin reacted badly to the adhesive around my stoma, so my base plate literally never felt secure. Every single day I worried the bag was going to come off, it was going to come away from my skin, I was going to have an accident. I'd literally find myself walking around with my hand pressed to my stomach just for a sense of security. I hated looking at it. I hated having my top off. I literally thought this was going to be my life. A couple of weeks after surgery, my stoma nurse handed me a Comfizz support band and said, try this. And I honestly had no idea that one simple piece of fabric could literally change so much. Suddenly my bag felt secure. I literally stopped worrying about my base plate, thinking it was going to just peel away from my skin. I could take my top off without feeling like the freak that I now thought I was. It actually gave me confidence to be intimate with my girlfriend at the time, something that I genuinely did not think I'd have the confidence to do, to literally have her see me when I couldn't even look at myself. This life-changing fabric has been the catalyst to me actually gaining my confidence back and actually subsequently getting my life back. 14 years later, I still wear a Comfizz support band every single day because it actually gives me confidence. So today's episode is a very special one for me because I'm sitting down with Lorraine, whose family created Comfizz after their own experience. Lorraine's father had Crohn's disease and subsequently ended up with an ostomy. Much like myself, he was having similar issues. The story of Comfizz is one about turning pain into purpose and creating something that has actually changed thousands of lives, including mine. So let's get into it. Lorraine, thank you so much for joining me today.
My absolute pleasure, Jonathan. I've been looking forward to it.
Likewise. I can't wait to dive into a lot of topics. I know myself, I've been using your products, Comfizz, for over 14 years now. So I can't wait to dive into the business side of things and everything. Yeah, it's been a while. Let's go. But,
thank you. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, well, the proof's in the pudding. They give me such support and such comfort that I haven't needed to try anything else. So it's been absolutely brilliant. But I suppose from your own journey and kind of I want to peel things back a little bit. When did IBD kind of first turn up in your own family's lives?
I suppose if I go right back, it started with my dad. I think I was a teenager. To be honest, you don't pay that much attention to your parents when you're a teenager. But I know when we had family holidays, he was sick. And we always had to find the toilets. We'd be out and about and then dad would disappear. He'd rush off and then he'd have fluctuations in his weight. Sometimes he would really lose weight and I didn't know what was going on until eventually, he was diagnosed Crohn's colitis and he eventually had to have surgery after suffering for over 20 years with that. I know. He was adamant that he wouldn't have a bag. He just could not get his head around it. He was not going there, but he did. So that was the first time really that we lived with bowel disease. And then about 4 years after my dad's operation, my youngest son was 12 years old at the time. And he actually started with lots of joint pains. He was an athlete. He was doing gymnastics and acrobatic diving, springboard diving and platform diving like Tom Daley at quite a high level. So he was training a lot. And at first we thought it was the training. We thought maybe, he's growing, he's going into puberty, the training's taking its toll. So we were cutting back on the training and he was just hobbling to school in the morning, his hips, his ankles, his knees. And he went under a rheumatologist. And it was the rheumatologist that suggested to us, has he been checked for Crohn's? And at first I'm thinking, what's he talking about? Bowels, It wasn't long before the bowel symptoms kicked in and he started to have really, really severe bowel issues. And then ended up in hospital and ended up with bowel surgery as well. So that's how IBD and Crohn's and everything came into our family. I had started working. I'm sort of backtracking a little bit because my dad didn't get on very well with his ostomy, as predicted. Very proud man, didn't want it. He's quite outgoing and he went within. He just withdrew from the world, basically. He was very, very self-conscious of the bag, constantly holding it, thinking people could see it. And at the time, my husband was working in textiles and producing high performance sportswear, like the base layers, body armor, seamless garments, which was really, really new. It was a burgeoning industry at the time. My husband, with his access to the sportswear, said, let me see, I'll talk to the factory, see if we can design something that will go high enough and have some compression to support your bag so you don't feel you have to hold it. Anyway, he made some boxer shorts. That was the very first Comfizz product, was a boxer short, just for my dad. It wasn't a business at all. It was just for my dad. And my dad came round the next day smiling, not holding his bag. He said, it's bloody brilliant. You know, in my dad's language, he said, I can't tell you how much difference it's made. He said, I feel like it's flattened the bag. I feel like it's holding the bag. He said, I've actually forgot for a moment a few times today that it's actually there. So that was happy days. We made another dozen pairs for him and thought that was the end of it. But he showed his stoma nurse when he went for a clinic appointment, and she asked him, where did he get them from? And she asked us to come to a little stoma support group meeting and display the garments to show other patients, and would we pick some samples for them. And it just went from there. But I backtracked to that because we did that for my dad, and that was that. And then, like I said, 4 years later, my son was diagnosed and I stayed in hospital with him. It was a dark time. I'm not going to lie. You know, any parent will know when your child's in pain, and as sick as he was, and then going through surgery. I couldn't think of anything else. I couldn't focus on the business. Nothing else mattered other than getting him through this and trying to support him. So I spent the best part of 5 weeks in hospital, barely came home. I was so angry. I thought, we've done our bit with bowel disease. Why my baby? I don't want this anymore. And I didn't want the business anymore. I didn't want to talk about bowel disease anymore. I was done. I just wanted to get him better and then do something else. And so we got him home. He was convalescing. I wasn't working in the business at that point. And then my husband came across a child. The nurses had asked, do we do anything to fit a child? And we didn't, because we were still quite new to this and developing the products. And so we went and we made a tiny little waistband for this child. And that piqued my interest again. I just thought, what? Kids living with stomas are not getting any support. They're not, it's all for adults. And so I slowly started and came back to the business part-time. So yeah, that in answer to your question, that was a long answer about bowel disease in our family. That's how it happened, and that's how it created the business accidentally. Yeah.
So much to unpack there. I have 1,000 questions because, my God, hearing first of all what your father went through, that is a level of torment. And that's how I felt when I initially got the bag. I thought, it's so obvious, it's here flapping beside me. Like, I've no control over it. Like, people are going to know it's there, and God, what if it leaks? All these sort of things. My stoma nurse gave me one-ear bands, and it was the first thing I put on. And it was the only thing that made me feel comfortable with the bag. I wear one of the bands every single day because it keeps it so nice and tidy and close to my skin and everything. So it has literally been life-saving and life-changing for me. And I can imagine the feeling that your father must have had when he went through everything that he went through, to finally have this kind of sense of peace that he could go about his life and give him back control. It's a beautiful story. I'm not gonna lie, I was getting quite emotional when you were telling it. Like it's
and it's music. It's music to my ears to hear you say that, Jonathan, because we hear that so much, and we hear these stories and we get lovely feedback from our customers. And I just, I have to pinch myself sometimes because I think, well, it's just kind of underwear. It's not revolutionary, but it is for people with stomas. It seems to make life-changing differences for different people for different reasons, depending on what they want to do. Yeah, so it's a beautiful thing. We love it. We love our business now. It's over 25 years, I think. I'm losing count. It's a long time. But it's our life now. And I'm good with it. I have peace with it now.
Like to know that your business is changing people's lives on a daily basis, because I was so body conscious when I first got it, but wearing the black band around it allowed me to take my top off in public and people not be thinking, oh my God, what's that? Because people would often say to me, or previously or afterwards when I'd speak to them, they'd be like, oh, I thought it was just a back brace or something. I thought you just needed it in the gym to support yourself. So it gives you that sense of safety and allows you that privacy that people aren't probably delving into your business that you don't want them to know, or awkward conversations that you don't want to bring up. So you have literally created a life-changing product, and like I know for my own self, physically, it has helped me preventing any issues that may arise, in the gym and things like that. But mentally, like the more I really think about it, like it changed the whole course of direction of my life with the stoma by having that sense of comfort with the product. So
Wow.
I can only commend you. It's an amazing thing that you've done and built up. The next thing I kind of want to dive into, because unfortunately IBD has shown up a second time in your lives, and your son being so athletic and like so full of life is the best way to describe it at such a young age.
Yeah.
And then his body to be attacked essentially by IBD, and then the gut symptoms to come. I know you mentioned there about being 5 weeks in the hospital. In my own life, I remember my mother lying on the ground with a blanket beside me in the children's hospital up in Crumlin, not willing to leave. So it's really a mother's love when you see your poor child going through this horrendous time. I suppose, what was the hardest part for you as a parent watching your child go through that?
I think for a while when he was in hospital, it felt like the medical teams on the ward had all the control. And for the first time as a mother, I had no control. I'm going to get emotional. There was my child. He was hurting big time and I couldn't help him. And there were things that the medical team were doing I didn't like. And I know some of it was necessary. I'll give you an example. Recently broken his nose in his sledging accident before he became ill. And it was fine and it was all healed and everything. And he was losing so much weight. I mean, he was about 5'10" at that time. He was quite a lanky teenager. And I think he weighed about 5 stone. I mean, he was a walking skeleton and it happened so fast. Weight just dropped off. So I was desperate to get some nutrition in him. And I said, could they not put like a TPN line in, like a Hickman line, something to get some nutrition in? Because if anything went into his bowel at that point, it was just agony for him and it would invariably come up. So they said, no, we don't want to do that. We're waiting to see if he needs surgery. We'll put a nasogastric tube down. And they managed to get the nasogastric tube down. It was horrific, absolutely horrific. And he immediately vomited it back out, but they insisted, because the consultant had said he has to have a nasogastric tube. They were going to put it back in. And I was like, I really, really don't want you to. But, if you think that's the only thing. So literally, long story short, they couldn't get the nasogastric tube in. His nose was bleeding and they were bringing other staff in and they were trying. And I'm just like, please stop. And he was crying and he was saying, Mum, I don't want it. It was terrible. I think, what am I doing? I'm his mum and I'm sat here watching these people try and ram a tube down his nose that I know is hurting him and it's not going to work. And they couldn't get it down. The second time they couldn't get it down despite trying. And so later in the day, the ward round and the big consultant with his team, there was about 6 of them, came and stood round the bed and he was, where's the nasogastric tube? I ordered the nasogastric tube. And I just sat there like a little child, thinking this is the teacher and I have to behave myself. And I just suddenly clicked and I said, no, it's not right. It's not right for him. It's not going to work and I'm not going to let you try again. And he was like, and there was a nurse stood behind him and she was like, giving me the thumbs up. Yeah, that's one of the things that's very, very difficult is you feel helpless, absolutely helpless. And I'm a bit of a fixer. I have to fix things, if anything goes wrong, I'll find a way. And I did loads and loads and loads of research. Still do, because I do believe that one day this horrible disease will be cured. And I had trained as a dietitian, but I didn't tell anybody in the hospital. I didn't say anything. So I was obviously very interested in nutrition. And I came across a really interesting book about the specific carbohydrate diet. It's an old book. It's not a new diet. And the science behind it made sense to me. So I was trying to talk to the doctors to ask their opinions. And of course, none of them had heard of it. And they were very dismissive, quite rude, actually. And I thought, one of them actually told me you shouldn't restrict his diet. You should just let him get on with it. Let him go to McDonald's with his friends and have his burger and Coke. And I was like, you're kidding me. He said that. Anyway, he was discharged from hospital and I talked to him about this diet and explained why it might work. And if he wanted to try it, it was very restrictive initially and then it gradually builds up. But he wanted to do it. So as a whole family, his brothers and sisters, we just said, right, we're all doing it. And we emptied the cupboards of pretty much everything because he couldn't have it. And we all did this diet for 18 months solid. And when he went back to hospital for his 6-month check, his doctor was like blown away how healthy he was, how much weight he'd put on. And he's like, what have we got him on? You know, what magic medicine is working? And I said, you haven't got him on anything. And he's really confused. And I told him about the diet and he wasn't interested. He still wasn't interested. So I don't know, you know, but yeah, it's very difficult to lose that control with your child. You want to make them better. And you can't with Crohn's, really.
Yeah, Crohn's is a fickle beast because, you know, one thing that works for one person might not work for another. But I just want to speak into just the power of standing up for yourself there, and also the moment of the nurse with the thumbs up behind you to kind of give you the gusto to know you're on the right track here, because your poor little boy was being tortured. He was being tortured in front of your eyes. And as a mother who's there to protect and look after her little boy she brought into the world, that is a different kind of torment. When your hands are tied, they're trying to help him. You don't know if you should tell them to stop or not. Torture, complete torture.
Yeah, you do. You feel like, well, obviously they're the medical team and they do know better in some areas. But in some areas, as a mum, you also know better. But you have no voice. When you're on that ward, you're under their jurisdiction and you have to behave. But I decided not to behave and I just said, no, you know, you're not doing it. And you had his surgery and you never had the nasogastric tube again. So
yeah, it's such power to knowing when to stand up for yourself, and obviously having to the first time you do it obviously is so hard because you're thinking, I haven't done this before, this is new territory and stuff, but you really have to be your own advocate in these situations, and your story there is absolute testament to it. I just want to dive into the diet a little bit, because that is absolutely fantastic to hear that, you know, you were able to go away, learn, take the information, put it into place, and it actually did so much to alleviate the symptoms. Health-wise then, from that point on, it was the diet. I know myself, I've done some extremely restrictive diets. They're for a certain period so not easy to do, but they're not something you can incorporate long time over the course of your life when it comes to actually, you know, living. Yes. How has he got on since?
He's great. He, like I say, he did the diet absolutely to the dot, didn't die for 18 months. And in the book, it actually says, do it for at least 12 months, because it's all about rebuilding the microbiome and allowing time for the bowel to heal so that food that's not supposed to get across doesn't get across. It seals up, it heals up. Meanwhile, the microbiome's rebuilding. And at that point, you can actually digest and eat foods that would have troubled you before. So, you know, you slowly start to reintroduce foods to see how you get on with them. And then you kind of slowly come off the diet and you're okay. And he was good. He was really good. Gosh. For over 10 years, he was good. And he wasn't on the FC diet for 10 years. But what he did do as he grew up into teenage years, because one of the silver linings of him having Crohn's and being in hospital was the chance to sit still for a minute. Because like I say, he was always doing sports and he was bored out of his head because he was too weak to do anything when he was ill. He sat down and learned how to produce music, electronic music, and started putting it up on YouTube. And a Radio 1 DJ, somebody heard it and passed it to her, Mary Ann Hobbs, actually. I don't know if you know of her. She played it on Radio 1 and she said, I've come across this piece of music. I think it was called Boss. And she was like, you just got to listen to this. Just listen to it. And so she played it. And then she told the listeners, I came across this, and then I heard this kid's like 14 years old. And she said, it just blew me away. And then he started to get contacted. People wanted to manage him. They wanted him to do DJ sets in clubs. And he was like 14. He's all like, no. You know, and his brother and sister are like, oh, Mum, you know, you've got to let him. I'm like, not a chance. I said, I don't want my 14-year-old in nightclubs. And they were laughing at me, saying, well, what do you think's going to go wrong? I said, I have been in nightclubs. I do know what goes on. You know, he said, oh, that Mum thinks it's all drugs and, you know. Anyway, we decided to let him have this opportunity, but obviously he had to have a chaperone. So always either his brother or me or his dad would go with him. And it just blew up. He ended up DJing all over Europe. He was having the time of his life. It was great. I can't remember why I've gone down this road now.
Well, I know it's testament to how much that taking responsibility for your own health allowed him to go and explore this avenue. It's unbelievable. I'll have to get him on the podcast next. Wow.
Yeah, that's the reason I was telling you that was because he then 15, 16, 17, he was living this life. And it was quite funny because when he would do a DJ set, you know, he would have a rider and they would ask him what he wanted on his rider. And it would be like bananas and, you know, they'd be like, oh, do you not want a bottle of gin? And do you not want it? And it's like, I'm not really, no. But gradually, as he grew up, you know, 18, 19, go for a pint with his friends. And the diet kind of got forgotten. Unfortunately, I'm not saying it was the diet that changed at all. I'm sure Crohn's was always going to rear its head again. And it has. Thankfully, he's not had any more surgery, but he is on biologics now. But because of what he learned about diet, he's very good. He's very good at controlling. He knows his body and he knows he has to live a certain way. And he doesn't do the DJing anymore because it was crazy hours, lots of traveling, you know, and he'd be DJing at 4:00 in the morning and then he wasn't recovering. It was just too much. So he doesn't do that anymore. And he does eat very carefully. And he decides. He knows if he goes to a party and has a few drinks, stays out too late, he knows he's going to feel crap the next day and for the rest of the week. And it might go on for longer. And he knows he has to be careful. So that sucks. But
that lifestyle, the DJ lifestyle, I'm sure with someone with absolutely no condition will take its toll on your body. You often see DJs as they get older, they get very old very quickly because of the lifestyle that they have to live. But obviously he has the knowledge and the wherewithal to know that, you know, he couldn't continue with that life because he obviously didn't have the health to do it. So I suppose knowledge and then taking the power back into your own hands and making those decisions is very hard because obviously you see the potential in a certain life and then Crohn's or your autoimmune condition can tear that away from you. It's very, very, very tough. I just want to dive into, I suppose, how you balance building a business like Comfizz and also being a mother at the same time. Like a lot to be going with there.
Well, like I said earlier, I didn't initially. I just didn't. I left it to my husband, and stayed at home full time, just looking after him. Because also, we were doing this SC diet, and it required everything to be cooked from scratch. So, you know, when he was back at school, he went back part-time, but I'd have to make food from scratch for him to take. You know, there was no normal lunch boxes anymore because there was no bread, no pasta, no snacks, no sugar. You know, we made everything. So I couldn't work and do that. That's one of the things that used to break my heart. And when I thought about people who are struggling with this illness, I could see the benefits of this diet, but I could see the obstacles as well, because not only is it a full-time job, constantly cooking everything, all really weird things with almond flour and, you know, no normal ingredients, but trying to do that when you're ill, if you haven't got someone to do it for you, it's impossible. Yeah, I got carried away at one point. I was thinking, I'm going to open a centre, like a retreat where people can come and they'll have the meals made for them and they'll be taught how to make them. And then when they're stronger, they can go home with some ingredients and carry it on. I mean, that was just a pipe dream. But yeah, it was hard. It was hard balancing business and looking after my son. But thankfully, you know, he did bounce back and he found his health again. And I found my passion because, you know, we started to create a small range for children. And then I remembered why we were doing it. And we started to get all the feedback again. Well, we were always getting the feedback, but I was hearing it again. And it was fine. It was fine. And, you know, I was a mother of 3 and you just do what you do.
Yeah, I have to say that there's the work you must have to go through. Obviously, you're being almost full-time chef, full-time carer. There's business to be run. There's so many things going on. Obviously, you have other kids. You know, the focus can always be on one person, and that can kind of have an impact on the whole family.
The other kids were also very active in their sports and, you know, performing at a high level and required 7 training sessions a week. And I was determined that was not going to, you know, be affected by his Crohn's. So I made sure that carried on as well. So life was hectic.
Yeah, it sounds it. And how did the whole family take on this whole new diet? Because I know in my own house, I was thrown on a few diets, but no one else was coming on them. My mum did them with me a few times, but everyone else was like, no, that's not for me.
Yeah, they're amazing. I'm biased. They're my kids. They're all adults now, but they're amazing. They really have each other's backs. They're very close as siblings. My eldest son, he did the diet 100%. And even when Sammy, my youngest, wasn't there, he wouldn't break the diet because he said, no, that's not fair because he can't. So I'm not. So he did it 100%. And me and his dad did it 100% because we felt the same. It's no fun if we're all cheating behind his back and he can't. I think his sister ate a bit more normal when she was out and about, but she never did in front of him. So yeah, they just embraced it. Actually, we all felt really good on it, to be fair. It
Yeah,
wasn't bad, but yeah, it was good. It was good.
Testament to what eating the right foods can do for you. And it also speaks to, I suppose, that how close it can make a family. Unfortunately, when disease comes into our lives, it can rock the whole family to the core. It has a ripple effect through everyone's lives. But one of the positives I know from my own life is that it has definitely made me so much closer to my brother, my sister, my mother, my father, because you really have to get in the trenches together and pull through. And it sounds like you have the very same experience. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what, as well, I think because they all did that diet and they learned about nutrition, obviously I was interested in nutrition anyway. They've all grown up with a real sense of they need to look after their bodies. They know how to look after their bodies. They know how to eat well, and they can all cook brilliant. So, it helps them all in a way. So yeah, these things come to us for reasons maybe we don't always see the bigger picture.
brilliant foundations to put in place is knowing what's in your food and how to cook it and how to do the things to make you as healthy as possible. Great foundation to build on. One thing that I know you touched on was kind of the basis that built up the business from the start with the ideas was the pediatric side of things. Could you dive into that a little bit for us?
Yeah, well, like I say, at the time when we started making these products, there was nothing. There was nothing available for people other than the very heavy girdles that were used for managing a hernia. And you'll probably know, and your listeners will probably know, that a hernia is a very, very common complication of having a stoma, which we didn't know when we first started making the support wear. We had no clue. By the way, my dad's 84 and has never had a hernia, and he's done a lot of heavy lifting and manual work. He's always worn Comfizz, and I'd like to think it was because of that he's not got a hernia. But so yeah, these products were quite new to the market, and as everyone will know, there are many different products now, and lots of companies doing similar. We noticed that, well, the nurses started to ask us for our level 1 boxers, briefs, and eventually level 2 as well for patients that had got a hernia. They weren't going to the belts because although the belts are the most compressive garment, they're the least comfortable to wear all day. What they were finding is that people were not wearing the belt for very long. So it's great. You're getting full compression and support for your hernia, but then you're getting nothing. So using the boxers and briefs, waistbands and vests that were softer, not as compressive, but better than nothing, was more useful. And we also learned that kids don't tend to get hernias. I think their little abdominal muscles are still strong. They don't seem to be as prone to hernias. But we had parents coming to us saying, but they want to do PE and they're really embarrassed putting their PE kit on. They don't want to show their stoma bag, or, they want to go swimming. So we just started to make neonates as well, little babies that have stomas. So we were making tiny little waistbands, and we just made a small range. I don't know why other companies, still to this day, really, well, I do. Probably it's not commercially viable, but they don't offer anything for kids. So we just did the boxers, the briefs, the waistbands, and the vests, boys and girls, so that kids could have the dignity that adults could have. Because, some kids get on with it, they don't care. Others struggle. I'll tell you a story. This is actually relayed from my husband because I wasn't there, but he tells me about, he would often go to the open days and the patient support group meetings. And he said he'll never forget this particular day. It was a kids event, and there was a little play area, and there were loads of toddlers and preschoolers and primary schoolers. He said, but there was one parent came to the tabletop with her son who looked to be about 12. So he was a little bit older than the other kids, and he was bundled up in so many layers and a great big hoodie, and he'd got his hood on and he was looking down, and he was really, not interacting, and knows that my husband was trying to talk to him about sport, and it turns out he was into cricket. And then he said, my husband said to him, why don't you just go and try this waistband on? He said, just, go to the toilets and go and try it on. He said, if you don't like it, you can throw it in the bin. It doesn't matter. And his mum encouraged him to go off. And he did. He went off and came back out without his hoodie. And his mum just looked at him and she filled up and she started crying. And when he went off to talk to somebody. She told my husband, she said, he never takes his hoodie off. He's so self-conscious about this bag. And she said, I'll tell you, but I don't tell anybody else. She said, he's been wrapping it in cling film and then taping it up. He was so afraid that it would smell, leak, or someone would see it. So she said to see him come out of the toilets without his hoodie, standing tall. And so, yeah, that was like, yeah, we need to do this for kids, because they have feelings just like adults and they have struggles similar to adults. Yeah. So, and I know.
Wow. And I think that's the beauty of, first of all, the product and the like. My God, to think that young man was cling film and rapping, and I can put myself in that young man's shoes because I would have been in the same level of self-conscious about it when I first got it. And I was first floated that I get a stoma when I was about 12 years old, and I refused. And when they told me it was going to be a real thing that might happen, I was about 14, and I said the words. I was like, I'll die rather than get that stoma, because that's where I went with it. And even my surgery was emergency surgery because it perforated. And when I woke up with it, I was like, I don't know, like I couldn't wrap my head around it. But I can safely say the bands that you provide changed my life, changed the direction of my life, changed the course of my life. And it's so funny how one small little thing could have such a massive impact. Yeah. So I can hold my hands up and say that the lives that you've changed by the products you've created, it's just, you can't quantify it. Yeah.
Well, this is why we do it, because we hear genuine stories. We see genuine stories. There was another chap. I'll just tell you another little story. It was a small local patient support group here in Leeds. And there was a West Indian guy. He was in his 50s, and the group were chatting and sharing stories and having tea and biscuits. And he just wasn't really engaging. He was very, very quiet. And again, my husband noticed that he was very withdrawn and said to him, I'd like you to try one of these garments if you would, persuaded him. And same story. He went and tried a boxers. It was some boxers. He said, just try the boxers. And he came back into the room and he started dancing. He started literally dancing in front of the whole group. And for the rest of the group meeting, he was so animated. He was like, you've got to try these garments. You've got to try these garments. He was so happy. And since then, he's come to the building where we work. And he said, I want to see what else you've got. I want everything you've got, But it's just so rewarding to see those changes. And you can't comprehend, if you haven't got a stoma, how can it make that much difference? But clearly it does, more so for some than others, because other people don't have, like you said at the beginning, everybody's different. Everybody's physically different, emotionally different. Their lives are different, the situations are different, but for some people, it really is life-changing. So it's a good thing to do.
Completely, absolutely. And I my own story, one of the reasons why I couldn't adapt to it was my skin used to light up around it, get severe reactions to all the adhesives. So the bags wouldn't actually stick to my skin. And to this day, it's still very red underneath it. And the only thing that keeps it stuck to my skin is the band, because I've such allergy to adhesive. So it gives me that level of, if I was to walk around for an hour without the band, my bag would come off. So that's how much of it just literally changed my life, because I don't know what we would have done. I would have had to be taping myself or cling filling myself the same as that young man. So I can put my hands up and say it is a life-changing product, and it is just the amount of lives you must have changed over the years. Just fantastic.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, absolutely. You do. It's great to, like, from the own pain that your family went through, to find a real purpose that has become this innovative product that has changed so many lives. It's fantastic. Unfortunately, your father had to go through what he went through, and your son has had to go through what he's going through. You have really turned it into a purpose, which is a fantastic thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think this is life, isn't it, Jonathan? I think everybody is faced with, it might not be a stoma, it might be something else, but we're all going to face challenges. If you can turn them challenges around into something, then that's great. If you can find a way, then life gets a bit easier.
Absolutely. Is there anything you'd like to dive into before we finish up?
I would actually. I'd like to just explain something about Comfizz products, because there has been quite a bit of confusion, and there's some dilemmas going on with the NHS at the moment about whether to prescribe the lighter levels. The different levels of support wear came about through Comfizz because we recognised that initially we just did the boxes for my dad, and then we did a brief for the ladies, and then we did a waistband, and we recognised that, as people were getting back up and running and going back to work, if they had manual work jobs or wanting to get back to the gym, level 1, which we now call level 1, it's quite light. It gives support, but maybe they needed a little bit more, but not a full-blown belt. So we started to create the level 1, 2, 3 system for different scenarios. And the way we did that, which nobody knows about and none of the other companies do or have the ability to do, is that my genius eldest son designed and built the world's only whole garment compression test rig. It's a machine that you can put the whole garment on and measure how much compression that garment is going to give somebody at the skin on their body. So we have been developing our garments based around compression. We tweak the style, we tweak the fabric, we tweak the knit until we get the level of compression that we know relates to a level 1 or a level 2 or a level 3. And we just did that quietly in the background because we wanted the quality to be consistent and we wanted it to be correct. And we wanted to know how much compression we were giving people. And what's happened over the years is obviously other companies have said, oh, we can do that. And they've made level 1s and level 2s, but they don't have the test rig. So they don't know it's a level 1. They don't know how much compression it's giving. And the NHS has finally caught up and is asking, what is a level 1? What is a level 2? What are we prescribing? And of course, we're able to do that, but they want a cross-industry consensus. So we're trying to help other companies find a way to be able to measure their garments so that we can all come up with a consensus to say that a level 1 is this to this compression, a level 2 is this to this. So yeah, and when the nurses tell patients sometimes, you can't have these on prescription, it's just underwear. You can get it from Marks and Spencer's or Primark. And you can get support garments on the high street. Obviously you can, but how much compression are you getting? Some people are not getting enough. Some people are getting too much, but we like to quality control and we know what level 1 is. We know what it's for, how it works, and the same with level 2 and level 3. So I thought I'd just mention that because that's a quiet little secret that Comfizz have in the background.
Yeah, this fantastic bit of information. And I love getting insight like that into how these things come about because obviously we see the level 1, level 2, level 3, and on the surface level, you understand this is the level of compression that you get.
Yeah,
but
light, medium, firm.
Completely. But it really is what a family business. Like that is fantastic that your son came up with such another innovative product to allow you to build a business. Not only are you building the business, but you're essentially building the industry to ensure that there is a level mark across the way so people understand what support they actually need and stuff like that. So it's fantastic. Fair play to you.
Yeah. I said we love it. We love it now. We're really, we're not going to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. The final question I'll have for you is, what does happiness mean to you?
It's got to be health, because no matter what you've got in this world, if you haven't got your health, it's hard to be happy. And obviously we've experienced when you haven't got your health. Obviously happiness is family or relationships, having somebody to share your life with, and purpose. If you've got your health and you've got happy relationships, whether it be a partner or your family or your kids, and you've got a purpose, life has meaning. And I think if anyone could find a purpose, even when they're going through dark times and illness, that'll help to get them through. So that for me is happiness. I have my health, thank you. I have my family, who I absolutely adore, and I definitely have my purpose. So that's happiness for me. Different for other people, but that's mine.
Oh no, that's a beautiful triangle, essentially, of health, connection and purpose. And I can speak testament to that in my own life. Without your health, you have nothing. Without the people around you, you have nothing. And if you don't have purpose in life, where are you going? So yeah, no, it's absolutely a beautiful perspective on it.
But I think your story is similar. You've gone through health issues yourself and you've found a purpose. You've used it. There's a silver lining there, and look what you're doing. And I thank you for this platform.
Thank you very much. I love it. I feel privileged to get to sit down to talk to people like yourself, hear the stories of what goes on. And like everyone goes through, I know we mentioned before, everyone will go through their own challenges in life, but to be able to come on, share the stories and educate other people on how you've come through it is just a great thing to do. So I really appreciate you coming on today, Lorraine. Absolutely my pleasure, Jonathan. Thank you for giving me the time, and it's always lovely talking to you, and thank you for wearing Comfizz. Always. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. this conversation resonated with you, I'd really, really appreciate it. If you could subscribe, drop a review, share this episode with someone who you think might need to hear it. Every share helps me reach more people, and I really, really appreciate the support. Also, if you'd like to check out and learn more about Comfizz products, you'll find all the links in the description below. I'll see you next week for my episode with Kate, who's the founder of the Wren Project. What the Wren Project do is they offer listening support to people living with autoimmune diseases in the UK. And they do it all completely free. It's a fantastic initiative. I can't wait to share the conversation with you. Thanks again for being here. I'll see you then.